NBA YoungBoy was celebrating his brother's first song release when things turned dark. "Y'all kill my little son made me cry this morning, boy." Reports say shots rang out, and now YB is seen all emotional, with folks saying what he plans to do next could change everything. Blood in, blood out. B-Way Young, NBA. YoungBoy's brother slid out the feds and dropped his first track. The ops who've been on YoungBoy's neck for years let it be known they still got smoke for the whole camp. B-Way Young ain't just some dude trying to blow off his brother's clout. That's blood. And when you blood tied to NBA YoungBoy, you got a price on your head, whether you asked for one or not. On or around February 20th, 2026, Boy Young dropped a new joint called In This B, his first track since touching back down from a bid. The song had that raw, drill-heavy energy you'd expect from somebody who grew up in the same trenches as YoungBoy. Street talk, chest-out bars, and the kind of music that lets you know a man just came home and got something to get off his chest. Clips started floating around social media. The hip-hop blogs picked it up, but the song hadn't gone mainstream yet. What had everybody talking more than the music was the timing, because Boy Yi didn't come home to peace and quiet. He came home to a full-blown war. His brother, NBA YoungBoy, government-named Kentrell Gaulden, has been locked into one of the most treacherous beefs in rap history. Tack, and this ain't the type of beef that stays between two rappers trading subliminals on wax. This one reaches into families. It reaches brothers. It reaches anybody close enough to claim NBA. Before the song even hit the internet, Boy Youngie was already back in the mix for a reported second-degree murder charge from late January 2026. The legal heat came before the music, and the music came before everything else fell apart. That's the sequence. And that's how quick things flip when your bloodline connects back to YoungBoy. But to really understand why B-Way Young putting out one song could land him right back in the danger zone, you got to understand the bond between these two. This ain't about a rapper and his homie from the block. This is about brothers, real ones. In an interview, Boy Young sat down and got asked about his relationship with YoungBoy. He kept it short at first, but what he said carried weight. "And talk to me about your relationship with your brother." "With my brother? That's my brother. That's my brother." No extra words needed. But then the interviewer pressed a little more, and Boy got real about what YoungBoy actually means to him on a deeper level. "Is there a close relationship that you have as well?" "Yeah, man, we gotta close it. He more like a father but a brother at the same time. A father and a brother wrapped into one person," and then he broke down the why behind it. "Say I never had a father. That's why I respect him the way I do. I got right. He never had a pops. So YoungBoy stepped up and filled that void. That ain't just a music connection or a label situation. That's a lifeline. That's a Young who grew up without a father figure, looking at his big brother as the one person who kept him on his feet." And when the interviewer asked how it felt knowing his brother is arguably the biggest rapper walking, Boy Youngie didn't say nothing about the mansions or the chains or the streams. He talked about what it really meant to him. He's potentially the biggest rap star in the world. That must be a surreal feeling for you as well. It's motivation, especially knowing where we come from. Motivation, especially knowing where they come from. That tells you everything. They're two brothers out of Baton Rouge who didn't grow up with nothing handed to them. No safety net, no silver spoon. The kind of upbringing where just making it to 18 is an accomplishment by itself. And YoungBoy didn't just make it. He turned into one of the most streamed artists on the entire planet. For Boy Youngie, that wasn't some faraway celebrity story. That was his big brother showing him the blueprint. And YoungBoy didn't just lead by example from a distance. He put that battery in his brother's back directly. Has he given you much advice as well on your music and how to steer your career? He always reminds me that I'm the sickest. He always tells me I'm the sickest. YoungBoy kept gassing his little brother up, telling him over and over that he got it, that he goes stupid on the mic, that he's that dude. That basically mean like, I go hard. Like I'm their thing. He always remind me that. Start. So when Boy E touched down from his bid and dropped in this B, he wasn't just throwing a song on the internet for fun. He was doing exactly what his brother told him he was built for. He was stepping into the lane that YoungBoy had been prepping him to run in. He was trying to build his own bag in an industry where his last name is the biggest flex and the biggest curse all at once. Because the issue with being YoungBoy's brother ain't the fame. It's the smoke that tags along with it. And that smoke been blowing for years, aimed not just at YoungBoy himself, but at anybody who stands next to him, anybody who shares his DNA, anybody who rocks the NBA flag. That means Boy Youngie. That means their brother, NBA OG33. That means every single soul who claims the camp. And these ain't just internet threats from keyboard warriors with no follow-through. These threats come from some of the most active blocks in America. And they come from a beef that's already put people in the ground on both sides. They come from individuals who have shown time and time again that they will back up every word they type with real-world action. To understand the weight of what Boy Youngie walked into the second he dropped that track, you got to understand the war his brother been fighting. And that war traces all the way back to one night in Atlanta that changed the whole landscape. How the beef got deadly. In the static between NBA YoungBoy's camp and the Chicago faction, Lil Durk, O-Black, OTF, all of them didn't kick off over a diss track or a slick comment in an interview. It kicked off over a body. November 2020, King Von, one of the coldest storytellers to ever come out of Chicago's O-Black, got hit outside a nightclub in Atlanta and didn't make it. The smoke that led to his death pointed right at Quando Rondo, one of YoungBoy's day one writers and collaborators. Wando Quando and his people were deep in the altercation that ended with shots being fired. And even though YoungBoy wasn't anywhere near Atlanta that night, everybody on the other side drew a direct line from Wando Rondo straight back to NBA YoungBoy. That's when the threats went from petty rap drama to something way more sinister. This wasn't two artists going back and forth for attention and clicks. This was real grief, real rage, and the kind of retaliation energy that don't burn out after a few weeks. King Von was more than just a rapper to O-Black. He was their voice. He was the one who took their pain, their losses, and their pride and turned it into records that the whole world felt. And when he got took out, the people he left behind wanted payback. Not in the booth, in the streets. The beef blew up into what a lot of people started calling an interstate gang war. Running from Baton Rouge to the A to the Chi, you with affiliates on both sides, catching slugs that weren't even meant for them specifically, but were meant for the set they repped. Death threats became part of the daily routine. Diss tracks became loaded weapons. Every new release drawing another line that couldn't be uncrossed. YoungBoy poured gasoline on the whole thing with bars that left absolutely zero wiggle room for misinterpretation. He rapped about, "Okay, get rolled up," straight up saying he was smoking on King Von's memory, and treating the man's death like it was something to celebrate. He followed it with lines about an Atlanta boy get folded up, another blatant reference to how Von got dropped. These weren't slick subliminals buried in wordplay. These were bars built to provoke the most violent possible response from people who had already shown they were ready to slide. And the clapback was exactly what you'd expect. O-Block members got on camera burning green flags, the color tied to YoungBoy's 4KT crew, and stomping them out in front of everybody, sending one crystal clear message. This ain't rap beef no more. This is personal, and it extends to everybody you love. Lil Durk, who had been one of the King Von's closest mentors and right-hand men, handled YoungBoy's provocations with a calculated iciness that was somehow even more unsettling than straight-up rage. When YoungBoy put out threats like, "You going die," Durk's only response was a social media post that read, "Hurry up." He went on Instagram Live, sitting right in front of King Vaz, staring dead into the camera without uttering a single word. The message was loud and clear. He was waiting, and he wasn't shook. But the threats didn't stay between YoungBoy and Durk. That's always the problem with these beefs. They spread, they bleed outward from the two main figures and swallow everybody caught in the crossfire. 8 Black affiliates started putting the entire NBA camp on notice. Not just YoungBoy, but his brothers, his people, his allies like Wando Rondo. During interviews, Black members like Durkee spoke openly about the mindset fueling their side of the war. A mindset built on the back of losing people like Manaduk and Young, where every funeral stacked another reason on top of the last to spin the block. This wasn't a beef that simmered down with time, and it was an open wound that kept getting ripped back open. Every new diss track, every IG post, every tour announcement became another spark near the powder keg. And the people making threats made it dead clear that their targets weren't limited to YoungBoy alone. NBA OG33, YoungBoy's brother, came out publicly and spoke on the threats aimed at the whole NBA camp. A camp that includes blood relatives like himself and Boy Yi, specifically tied to YoungBoy's mass tour. And the threats traced back to individuals connected to Lil Durk's circle and King Vaugh's old stomping grounds. OG33 didn't sugarcoat what they were dealing with. These weren't random trolls hiding behind burner accounts. These were people with verified ties to real street activity, sending messages that the NBA family took seriously enough to address in front of the whole world. And that's the climate Wei Young came home to a beef that had been raging for 5+ years with no ceasefire in sight. A target stitched to his back that he inherited the day he was born into YoungBoy's bloodline, and a music career that by its very nature would park him right back under the spotlight, right where his brother's ops wanted him. The war had already produced threats, retaliatory diss tracks, burned flags, coordinated social media intimidation campaigns, and real-world violence that left people on both sides in caskets. And it was about to produce something even more dramatic, an event that showed everybody watching just how far YoungBoy's enemies would go to make a point. The chai-how that got bodied. When NBA YoungBoy announced the mass tour with a stop at the United Center in Chicago, the response from Black and their affiliates was immediate and hostile. They took it as straight disrespect. YoungBoy, you're the man whose right hand was wrapped up in King Van's death, was about to perform in Van City on Black's turf, and they weren't about to let that slide without making some serious noise. The threats against the Chicago show came from every direction. Black affiliates put out explicit warnings that YoungBoy won't make it out alive if he stepped foot on that United Center stage. The language wasn't coded or subtle. One message floating around read, "I bet you all type of money, right? If WB come to a show, they at C's not leaving Chicago, I promise." And the threats weren't just pointed at YoungBoy. They extended to Wando Rondo and anybody else tied to the NBA camp who might pull up to the building that night. But the threats didn't stop at social media posturing and tough talk. According to somebody who claimed to have the inside scoop on what went down behind closed doors, the situation escalated to a point where the venue had no choice but to act. And what really happened was why B ended up canceling show. It's because of it was a lot of death threats being sent to the United Center. Death threats sent straight to the United Center. Not just vague internet chatter from anonymous accounts. Actual calls placed to the building itself spelling out what was going to happen if YoungBoy touched that stage. People was actually calling the United Center. People was actually calling United Center and letting them know like people were hitting up the venue directly and delivering messages that left absolutely zero room for interpretation about the consequences of hosting the show. If this show happened, it's going to go down up there. It was a lot of little fake death threats and that actually going on, like, you feel me? So like I told y'all before Kane Bond, he had a lot of fans. And he got a lot of enemies too. And he got a lot of people that you feel me that like why he got a lot of people that like YB, like they like him. But the thing is, like, this is city. Now here's where it gets important. YoungBoy didn't pull the plug himself. According to the same source, YoungBoy was locked in. He wanted to do the show. He was ready to slide into the lion's den and put on for his fans regardless of who had a problem with it. But the call wasn't his to make. EQ had a lot of EM. It was a lot of death threats that was called in the United Center. Don't be out here acting like YB mother out of this. It wasn't YB decision to do it. Let's say that it was his label decision. The label pulled the plug and the United Center co-signed the decision. Both parties linked up at the last possible minute and agreed that the risk was too crazy to move forward. YB didn't cancel the show. The label and the United Center, they came together. And they came together and killed the whole thing. And the reasoning boiled down to two factors: bread and safety. And they made this decision at the last minute because it was death threats coming through the United Center about if YB did the show that it was going to go down up there. And you feel me? And the United Center didn't want to have to pay for extra security. You know what I'm saying? The financial picture alone was wild. YoungBoy was reportedly locked in at $6 to $700,000 just for the performance. But with the flood of threats pouring in, the label told the United Center they needed to seriously upgrade security. "We're gonna need y'all to beef up on the security and like that." Right. The United Center didn't want to do it. The United Center crunched the numbers and said, nah. They were already on the hook for YoungBoy's bag. Now, they were being asked to stack additional security costs on top. Bring in on-duty police officers and put together the kind of operation you'd normally associate with a presidential visit, not a hip-hop concert. They told the label that if we got to do all of this, it's getting to the point where we ain't making no money up this man, and we got to beef up. The venue was bleeding money before the doors even opened. Between the performance check, the beefed up security detail, and the price tag of having uniformed officers stationed throughout the building, all of which was coming out of the United Center's pocket, the math just didn't add up anymore. So, we already paid this man $600,000. Now, we got to beef up security and we got to have on-duty police officers here. Y'all know how much this Osterau costing us. And then came the moment that tipped the whole thing over the edge. It wasn't just general death threats no more. Memo, an O-Black affiliate. He hopped in an interview and said something that sent shockwaves through the entire operation. Like they get the call in up there, and it was those Hisachier interviews when Memo jumped his ass up on that interview, and he said it's going to be a fan that walk up on YB and he got a bomb strapped to him. A fan with a bomb strapped to him. That statement set off a whole new avalanche of threats, including straight-up bomb threats called directly into the United Center. And they started doing like bomb threats and Mount TE at the United Center to the United Center. Blood. They was doing all type of wrong. Like that, blood. They ended up canceling the show. And that was a wrap. The show got axed, not because YoungBoy was shook, not because he didn't want to perform, but because the ops who wanted him gone made it financially and logistically impossible for the event to go down safely. The source made it clear how YoungBoy felt about the whole situation. His label canceled the show. He didn't cancel it. Right now. My source telling me right now that YB is pissed. They say YB pissed off right now. YoungBoy was hot. He didn't fold. He got overruled. And that distinction is everything, because it tells you exactly what kind of dude he is. The same fearlessness that turned him into one of the biggest artists alive is the same fearlessness that would have had him on that stage in Chicago, knowing full well that people in the crowd might be strapped. And the canceled show proved what everybody in YoungBoy's camp already knew. The threats weren't just cap. They were coordinated, persistent, and powerful enough to shut down a major arena event in one of the biggest cities in the country. And if they could do all that to YoungBoy himself, a man with millions of dollars and serious security around him, what could they do to his little brother who just came home from a bid and don't have anywhere near the same resources, protection, or public profile? That's the shadow B way ye released in this be under. Not just the shadow of his brother's fame, the shadow of his brother's whole war, a track record of burning every bridge. To fully clock the minefield that Boye walked into, you got to understand something fundamental about NBA YoungBoy. The man has a documented relentless habit of going scorched earth on damn near everybody who enters his orbit. It ain't just rival gang members or opposing rap cliques. YoungBoy has turned on his own signees, dissed his own mama, scrapped with his own fans, and violated people who once rode for him with their whole chest. The fallout from all of that is a man who's got smoke coming from every conceivable angle, and a little brother who catches all of that residual heat just because they share the same blood. Take the No Cap situation. No Cap was signed to YoungBoy's label. He was in the inner circle. He held it down for YoungBoy for 3 whole years. But in late 2022, when a fan asked Nope on Twitter to drop new music with Top, No Cap gave what sounded like a perfectly normal response. He said he wanted to establish himself first, so people wouldn't say he only blew up because of YoungBoy's cosign. That one tweet made YoungBoy snap. He jumped on Instagram and started airing out a man who had been loyal to him day in and day out. He called him a worker. He told him they don't make music together because he don't rock with him like that. He pushed back by explaining his loyalty, and pushed back by explaining his loyalty, and the 3 years he held everything together, YoungBoy went even harder, calling him broke, clowning his tax problems, and weaponizing every piece of personal info he had against the man. The fallout with No Cap wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. The streets believe the real reason YoungBoy turned on No Cap was because No Cap wouldn't jump into YoungBoy's beef with Lil Durk. In YoungBoy's world, staying neutral is the same as choosing the other side. If you ain't stepping into the war with him, you're against him. And that mindset don't just create ops out of rivals, it creates ops out of people who used to be family. The exact same thing played out with Moneybagg Yo. In 2017, the two were tight enough to drop a whole collab tape together. But damn near immediately after the tape hit the streets, YoungBoy hopped on IG and started disrespecting both the project and Moneybagg personally. No explanation, no trigger, just raw, unpredictable hostility that flipped a creative partnership into a physical confrontation because YoungBoy's crew and Moneybagg's people reportedly got into a scrap at a mall shortly after the falling out. Then there was the situation with DJ Flip, who Boozy had arranged to use a studio through. YoungBoy slid through to the same studio, posted up on the couch cussing with his girl, and when it came time to lay some vocals, he looked at the man whose studio it was and said one word. Wait, hold on. Why did he kick you out the studio? I don't know what he was on that day. I with him heavy though. So Bowie's like, yo Flip, I need a studio. Bowie set the whole thing up. Flip got everything ready. And then YoungBoy pulled up. Boom, pulled up. Got the studio ready for him. And then YoungBoy pulled up and then he wanted to record. And what went down next pretty much sums up YoungBoy's whole aura in one moment. He just like looking mad. He's cuddling on the couch and with his girl, and then he's about to record and he looked dead at the man whose studio he was sitting in. A studio that had been prepped as a solid, and hit him with one word and he's like, exit. He looked at me and said, exit? Not, my bad. Can you step out for a sec? Not, give us a minute, bro. Exit. That's how YoungBoy moves, with a bluntness that borders on disrespect, even toward the people who are going out of their way to look out for him. And then there's the move that crossed a line even by YoungBoy's wild standards, going at Lil Durk's girl, India Royale. During their 2022 diss track exchange, YoungBoy didn't keep the smoke between him and Durk. He dragged India into it directly in the song I Hate YoungBoy, calling her out of her name with bars that left no room for any other interpretation. And when Durk and India later broke things off and a video of India dancing popped up on the timeline, YoungBoy used it as another chance to twist the blade, tweeting, "LOL, I know how it be when that turned to a demon to clown both of them for the whole internet to see. India popped back. She told YoungBoy to keep her name out his mouth. Earwart that she let it rock the first time, and that Dirk is still her child's father and she don't play about him. YoungBoy's response was vintage top. I know one thing. You ain't going to mother playing with me. Essentially telling a woman that things could get real ugly for her too if she kept testing him. This is the behavioral blueprint that has defined YoungBoy's entire run in this game. Confrontation with no guardrails, disrespect with no hesitation, or a willingness to say and do whatever enters his dome, regardless of the blowback. Not just for himself, but for everybody in his orbit. His mama got kicked out of the crib he bought her because she went live on the gram. His DJ got stomped out backstage at a show in Florence, South Carolina by YoungBoy and Quandarando for what appeared to be no reason at all, an attack that left the man with a busted tooth and injuries bad enough to take to court. His shows have been marked by incidents where people smuggled blicks into the venue, creating the kind of security disaster that eventually played a role in the Chicago cancellation. Every single one of these incidents adds another name to the list of people holding a grudge against YoungBoy. Every bridge he burns creates another potential threat. And those threats don't just land on him. They land on the people closest to him. And the person closest to him, the one who looks at him as both a father figure and a brother, is Boyungi. Boyungi didn't sign up to inherit these enemies. He didn't choose the beef with Oblak, or the fallout with No Cap or the death threats pouring out of Chicago. But when you're YoungBoy's blood, choice got nothing to do with it. You're in the war, whether you enlisted or not. And dropping a song, be putting yourself out there with aggressive drill bars and the NBA name stamped on your identity is like stepping into a room full of people who've been waiting for exactly this type of opportunity. The price tag on family, the violence swirling around NBA YoungBoy's world, don't live in some hypothetical space. It got names attached to it. It got dates. It got consequences that stretch way beyond the booth and the stage, and bleeding into the personal lives of people whose only offense was being connected to the most polarizing rapper of his generation. YoungBoy's baby mama, Art Kalola, was reportedly run upon by two of his other girlfriends while she was holding their child. That situation had nothing to do with rival sets or disc records. That was the chaos of YoungBoy's personal life boiling over into hands being thrown on the mothers of his own kids. His own mother confirmed that he sent $1 million to one of his baby mamas, who then took his son and daughter and dipped, vanishing into a custody war that stacked yet another layer of chaos onto an already fractured family situation. And the threats don't even confine themselves to people who actually know YoungBoy personally. An Oblak member threatened to tie up a little kid who was nothing more than a fan of YoungBoy's music. A child who had zero involvement with the beef, zero involvement with gang politics, zero involvement with anything other than bumping a rapper's songs. That's how deep the hatred runs. It reaches kids. It reaches complete strangers. It reaches anybody who can be used as a pawn to get at the person they really want to touch. So, what does all of that mean for B-Way Young? It means dropping in this B wasn't just a career play. It was a declaration whether he intended it that way or not. That he exists in the same universe as his brother. That he carries the same last name. That he makes the same type of hard-hitting music. And that he's willing to step under the same spotlight that has turned every other person in YoungBoy's circle into somebody the ops got their eyes on. The beef between YoungBoy's camp and the Chicago faction has already left bodies on both sides. Associates laid down, homies put in the dirt, family members threatened to their face, major concerts shut down, and the escalation shows absolutely no sign of letting up. Every new song, every new post, every new public appearance by anybody flying the NBA banner becomes a potential trigger for the next round of the cycle. B-Way Youngie knows all of this. He grew up watching it unfold in real time. He watched his brother become one of the most famous musicians on the planet, while simultaneously becoming one of the most hunted men in the rap game. He watched OG-33 go public about the threats their family catches on the regular. He lived through the legal system himself with his own murder charge. And still he walked out them gates and cut a record because that's what YoungBoy told him to do. YoungBoy told him he was the sickest. YoungBoy told him he'd go stupid. YoungBoy told him he's the thing. And Boy Young took his brother at his word, the same way he's been taking his word since they were youngins growing up with no father, leaning on each other because there wasn't nobody else in their corner. The track in this B is aggressive, confrontational, and unapologetic. Exactly the type of music that goes crazy in hip-hop circles. And exactly the type of music that puts a bullseye on your back when your brother's ops are monitoring every move you make. The clips circulating on social media brought attention. The reactions brought more attention. Yet an attention in the world. YoungBoy Moves In is both a bag and a death sentence. Messages floating around from O-Black affiliates have included warnings like, "It's going to rain at that show." Coded language that everybody in the culture reads as a threat of gunfire. Those warnings weren't just aimed at YoungBoy sets. They extended to the whole camp, the whole bloodline, everybody who walks under the NBA banner. B-Way Young dropped his first track after a prison bid into this reality. Not into some supportive industry ready to welcome a new voice with open arms. Not into a neutral playing field where talent alone determines how far you go. He dropped it into a 5-year war that has consumed his brother's life, destroyed relationships, ended careers, and put people in the ground. He dropped it knowing that the same individuals who called bomb threats into the United Center, the same people who burned 4 KT flags on camera for the world to see, and the same people who threatened to put YoungBoy in a box at his own concert, those same people now got another member of the family to lock their sights on. And that's the story of how B. Youngie's first song, Out the Feds, became something way bigger than a music drop. It became the latest chapter in a saga of violence, loyalty, and blood ties that has defined NBA YoungBoy's career from day one. A saga where the cost of being family ain't measured in dollars or streams. It's measured in threats, in canceled shows, in caskets, and in the cold reality that no matter how far you run or how high you climb, the enemies your brother made will always know your name. YoungBoy told his little brother he was the sickest. He told him to go hard. He told him he was the thing, and Boy Young listened. He dropped his joint. He stepped into the light. Now the whole world watching to see what comes next. So tell me this. After this latest hit in his family, should YoungBoy move different or just double down? Let me know what you think in the comments section. For more videos like this, click on this next card on your screen.